Okay, joining us today is David Luijerink, partner at KPMG, who will be speaking at the 12th Annual Fraud Summit 2011, which will be held on the 27th and 28th of June in Sydney. Thanks very much for joining us, David.
Sure, Phil.
Would you please tell us where the fraud function sits within an organisation?
Well, it really depends on the type of organisation, but generally you'll find it under a risk or compliance or security type function. I mean, you will see, for example, in financial institutions who usually have this an established practice within those. If you go out into industry wider, sometimes it'll be within internal audit and sometimes a standalone unit reporting back up to a higher level of management. I think one of the things that's really interesting is about firms who really have clearly set out that they want to do something and be proactive about fraud, that is, manage the risk of fraud. And specifically where they've been tasked to do that, then you're more likely to find a risk focus on it or reporting to a risk function.
According to Peter Roebuck, accounting professor at the Australian School of Business, University of New South Wales, prevention is the best way to manage fraud, and $1 invested on prevention now will save $100 on detection later. What's your views on this?
I think prevention is a key place for organisations to start. We look at it in three aspects. We look at prevention being the place to start, followed by detection and then response. And prevention really is about investing money with people, getting them to understand what the firm's about, the tolerance level to fraud, the reporting obligations of people, and really trying to stop it before it gets anywhere, if you like. But really, more and more importantly, is the detection part of the process, the analytics and the other types of things that we do to pick up fraud, given that inside of fraud, or these big cases that we see often go for over 2 years. Many of the cases I've dealt with have gone for 2, 3 or 5 years. And so having detection to shorten the time frame and to how we pick these up is also a very relevant part of the equation of identifying and managing the risk of fraud.
As a partner at KPMG, would you please share how various organisations have measured their effectiveness of their risk management program?
I think firms are in different places about it. We did some work recently on survey, and we went out to some leading organisations around the world. And what we found is that a large majority, over 65% of these firms, actually had some sort of effectiveness monitoring arrangements in place. Now, some of them were fairly at a base level, if you like. They were based on qualitative factors. But more and more, there are quantitative and indicator type things, and particularly if you went into telecommunications and banking and some of the other industries, they're quite developed on the types of metrics that they use, and they need to monitor to make sure that they are looking at the cost of fraud to their business, which at the end of the day hits the bottom line.
So you're speaking at the 12th Annual Fraud Summit to be held on the 27th and 28th of June in Sydney. What are some key areas you'll be addressing on the topic of observations of good practice of fraud risk management in organisations?
Phil, I'll be looking at and speaking about some of the things I've seen here in Australia, but also across the world. I've spent many years working in other parts of the world, and so I'll be bringing that. What does good practice really look like as far as on what sort of governance arrangements and clear messages tone at the top? What's really working for firms and what hasn't worked in the past? What are some of the things that we see on risk? What's more effective ways of understanding the risk pie, if you like, and how can we better monitor it? So those are the sorts of things. In a time of, we've just recently issued the fraud barometer again, and for 2010, and once again we see the losses in Australia at over 200 million that are going in front of the courts. And so I'll be bringing forward some of those practices and how some firms have been able to deal with and in fact reduce the levels of fraud in their organisation.
Thanks for joining us today, David, and we look forward to your presentation at the summit.
Thank you, Phil.